It's the worst of the CBC for November 25th, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Okay, so today's episode, the CBC wasn't terrible today, but almost everything had some sort of addendum that wasn't said. Not horribly done, but again, every story needed to be sort of fleshed out a little bit more to make it complete. So we'll start with the native settlement debacle with the Trudeau government. One, everyone is pointing out the hypocrisy and the hilarity that Trudeau talks about how much he loves the Indigenous and they just need to have so much money and we need to throw money at them. But when there's a court ruling saying we have to throw money at the Indigenous, he then fights that in court. Now, I've outlined wholly my views on this in previous videos and how the real problems are actually government and bureaucracy hurting them here, not so much racism, whatever, because this decision is from 2001, 2007, not the 1960s when we were snatching kids out of their houses for just evil, silly reasons. This was more government bureaucratic failure. So that wasn't, of course, touched upon, and I've explained my views in countless videos at length because it's a complicated subject. For the most part, they didn't say Trump. They did bring in Trump later in the day to talk about him saying he wouldn't blame if Canada and Mexico fell out of the U.S. and Canada-Mexico trade agreement, which isn't NAFTA. Currently, NAFTA applies, but we're going to get a new trade deal. But the Democrats won't ratify it because they're being obstructionist. And Trump's sort of giving Canada and Mexico an out here. Now, Canada should take the out because we are much better under NAFTA than the new trade deal, which hurts our position slightly to moderately in some places. Some places, the important parts are unaffected. The only reason we don't have leverage here, and we just don't want to say anything, is because we have a weak government, and with the current CN rail strike, our economy is such in shambles that we literally can't handle a modicum of instability right now because we're teetering on the edge. Which brings us to the next thing they didn't mention, which is the CN rail strike. And they're talking about Quebec. Farmers are coming in and dumping corn on the steps of Trudeau's campaign office in Montreal. And they had to bring on an expert to explain to everyone why natural gas shortages hurt more than what you think. And they basically explained that, you know what? Natural gas and fossil fuels are part of literally everything we do in our daily lives in the economy. No wonder. So, again, most people, if you're a fan of the show, you probably know this. If you live in Alberta and Saskatchewan, you definitely know this. And half the country understands this. The other half chooses not to. Now, it was hilarious to watch them explain. However, there is I thought it's malpractice on the media to not then turn around and say, hey, if there was a pipeline, this wouldn't be an issue. Because a pipeline, a cross-Canada pipeline that would allow natural gas to flow from where it's produced in Canada to everywhere else in Canada would get there in higher volume, would get there faster, would get there with less chance of ecological disaster. Railways can crash too. It's overall more environmentally friendly when you break it down. It just doesn't sound as environmentally friendly to crazy people. So they brought an expert to explain that actually natural gas is involved in everything. If we get a freeze before it can dry, entire grain shortages in Quebec could be ruined. Yes, fossil fuels are important. And fossil fuels and development of our resources actually reduces overall emissions because of efficiency goals. I've explained this countless times. It seems like no one who votes Liberal or NDP or Green listens to me. Why not? Okay. So they did a bit of an anti-pipeline story later down the road. So again, that just needed an extra sort of, but if we had a pipeline, this is how the pipeline would mitigate these disasters. Here's how pipelines would avoid economic catastrophe in this country, or farming catastrophe, or agricultural catastrophe. Here's how pipelines could help. They never mentioned pipelines. They just talked about the rail strike. So a big omission there. And then they did do a story finally talking about the Uyghurs in China and how horrible China is to them. Concentration camps, basically, putting pressure, kidnapping family members to make Uyghurs come home or taking their blood samples from abroad. Like really crazy, evil 1930s Nazi level stuff that the Chinese are doing. Now, the addendum they didn't add in here, which isn't the most egregious one, but I think it deserves mentioning, is to date, not a single Muslim majority country has criticized China's actions on the Uyghurs. Why? And the reason I bring this up is because it just really explains Middle East politics 101 so well. And the Middle East countries, it just really articulates that they only respect an ironclad fist. And if you see, this is sort of one of the reasons why Israel and Palestine doesn't have peace, or Israel and the Arab countries don't have peace. The reason why they don't have peace, or they have a tentative peace with two countries, is because after Israel won their wars, after they won, for example, the 67 war and won all this territory, they immediately said, hey, we'll give you every territorial gain back. We'll give you back just for a peace deal, right? We'll give you everything we get back. They told the Palestinians, no, come back. They brought buses to bring them back. We're not kicking out of your homes. We're not kicking out of your homes. We're not giving you this. Here, let's just be friends. And it turned into an utter catastrophe. They got no peace, no resolution, no recognition. The three no's, right? But the Arab countries will never go against China because they know if they speak out against China publicly, China will cut them off from international aid. It will go to the extreme. It will say, we're pulling all investment out of your countries. We're going to fuck you over economically. We're then going to never vote with you in the UN. We're then going to leverage every other country in the region against you. And we will go 1,020% to the extreme if you do 1% against us. And the Arab countries respect this because that's the language they understand. So I just thought it would have been interesting to at least point out that there is no Muslim majority country that is criticizing China's actions against Muslims, and that is because China has them controlled with an iron fist, and that is sort of the language of Middle East politics. And it goes to one of the things I've been saying: you can't be looking at the Middle East like you do the Western countries. It's not the same thing. So I think that sort of wraps up for today. What does it get on the Rosemary Barden scale? I mean, I've seen worse, so we'll give this a 4 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barden scale. There was a couple hours they didn't mention Trump. They then didn't mention Trump. But every story was okay. It just needed a little bit more to make it well reported. So it gets a 4 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barden scale. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.